Welcome to the 2024 Traveller Mayday Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Succardi from CyborgPrime Games. My guest in the studio today is Mr. Neil Thorpe of 2D Storyteller. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for returning. How have you been?
I've been well. It's been a good year.
Fantastic.
Lots of ups and downs. And great. Well, Dune's out, for one.
Right.
Which is a favorite of mine.
Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm 2D Storyteller. I make animated, interactive, and static assets for roleplay games, tabletop games, sci-fi, fantasy, that kind of thing. Character tokens, battle maps. Come to me, 2D Storyteller.
All right. For folks who are just joining us, give us the Reader's Digest version of how you got into gaming.
Oh, well, I started at a young age. Joined my local gaming group down at the university. I later went on to work for Games Workshop as a red shirt, running intro games and startling the next generation with 4+. And since then, I've just kept my hand in it. I mean, like anyone else, I'll have periods of breaks away from it and then return. But I always seem to come back because I love it. I love the imagination, I love the storytelling. And, yeah.
So, how did you go from being a gamer, like an RPG gamer, to deciding to start your own game company?
Well, I trained in VFX and film production, and that's what I went on to be a lecturer in at my local university. And while I was doing it, just as my own way of continuing to upskill myself, I thought, oh, well, I'll make something for my local roleplay game that I did periodically with a few friends of mine. And the more I made, the more it just seemed to just pan out and become a great way to upskill and create stuff. And the more I wanted to create, and then the ideas started coming thick and fast. And before you know it, I started my own little business on the side of what I was between lecturing, and these days, that's what I'm doing full time. I've taken the leap, and here I am.
So, what gave you the idea of getting into making animated battle maps?
Well, I can't say I invented it. I saw someone else doing it, and I thought it was fantastic. And I thought, well, why? Because up to that point, I'd only been making static battle maps and static tokens. And I thought, well, my skills are all based around film and digital media, so So I decided to just jump into that and see what I could create. And don't get me wrong, it's very different than making a film in ways, but it's very similar in ways as well. You've got to try and tell a story from a top-down angle. I love telling stories through a visual medium. The top-down angle is a challenge, but once you get used to it, it's like any other camera shot. You just learn how it conveys, how it tells its story, and how it emotes. And yeah, so that's how I started with the animated side of things.
When you come up with a new scene or a new like a new battle map pack, like how do you figure out what kinds of tokens and things need to be created for that?
Well, like with any creative process, you got to start with an idea, and it's got to be an idea that you get excited about. If you can get excited about what you're going to create, then the likelihood is your imagination is going to naturally bounce to all the right questions. For example, if I'm creating, say, for example, when I was making Starship Battles, I knew I wanted spaceships, but also, if you need the location, you need what kinds of spaceships. You're going to take inspiration from your favorite films and popular culture. That's kind of unavoidable. It's just what you got to do is take that inspiration and then run with it in your own direction. How does this come to life on a virtual tabletop or on an actual tabletop? How do you actually make that breathe? And if you chase your inspiration and you start with a strong idea, those questions come quite naturally. And it's just, after a while, it's a case of filling in the gaps. I want this, so I'll create that. You create that, 2 more gaps open up, and then you just keep chasing the gaps until finally you decide this is kind of done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, done is kind of a generous word because nothing I've made ever feels completely done. But I suppose that's kind of like the burden of anything anyone's trying to create.
I see. So if you're gonna do like a lost temple, you might have I'm gonna need a temple. I'm gonna need a tomb. I'm gonna need, I don't know.
Exactly. Immediately, the questions start coming up, and then once you've got your temple and your tomb, and you can see it in front of you, you think, "Well, okay, I've got that temple and tomb. So, what kind of creature might live here? You know, is it a hydra or a dragon or an ogre or a troll?" And as soon as you answer that question, that fills up, creates a few more gaps you've got to fill. So, in a way, you are basically just always filling the gaps. That's a terrible way to describe it, but that is kind of the mental, psychological way that I pursue a project.
Do you do it as you go along, or do you like make a master like brainstorming map of all the things that could go in there and then go, this isn't practical, or this is a bad idea, kind of cross things off? Or
I always start with a very detailed plan. I'm old, so I get a pen and paper and I draw out.
What?
I'm sorry, but these are very ancient, archaic things. but I start with a pen and paper and just draw out maps, draw anything I think is relevant, maybe get some stylized kind of ideas down, and then see how close I can get to it. Now, usually by the time that I've got pretty close, I've started to abandon the plan. But without the plan, I'd never get to that point, if you know what I mean. So the plan is always vital, but I always end up like abandoning it at some point and then just running with whatever I've got in front of me. That's what I always try and do. I try and keep my mind on where the project's leading me, not just where I want it to go.
You started with making like pirate ships and different kinds of mostly fantasy realm stuff.
The group I was originally playing with were all about D&D. We all know it's the biggest game.
Sure.
And so naturally that's where I began. So I just tried to create things which were a little bit out of the ordinary, because there's lots of battle maps out there for the normal things, just a simple forest or just a simple area. You got piles of them available for you to use.
Sure.
So I just started to try and create my mentality is I try and imagine a scene of a film, like one of the high points, the big scene, and then try and recreate that moment with assets for a GM to try and bring that scene to life. Like I've got a chase scene in there, and that was that was a challenge, because everything's moving, the ground's moving, any tokens you create have got to be riding horses, everything's moving. That was a tough pack to complete. There was a lot of moving parts, but that's the way with every single scene with the ship. You know, as soon as you think, all right, I'm going to have a ship traveling through the ocean, so I need the ocean moving. Oh, but what then? What would be a big bad guy in the ocean? Everyone, natural kraken. So all of a sudden, then I've got to build a kraken. And then I've got to somehow find a way for the kraken to be controllable by the GM. And it all just snowballs into a massive project that turns your hair a bit grayer each year.
Right.
But it's good fun, and that's why I keep going for the grey hair.
No, they're beautiful and they're great. Like there's one where doors open in the side of the mountain, or there's like a bridge over waterfalls and it's all animated and the bridge falls away, and like all kinds of really cool imaginative stuff.
Well, that's the interactive elements I mentioned earlier, because when I started creating static and animated work, I started to, because in a VTT, you've got a certain amount of control of the assets on the screen. And in VFX, you work a lot with trying to isolate certain elements and trying to create, individual effects need compositing. And that's labor intensive, and it's a very detailed skill that you got to learn how to do. And so it occurred to me that what if parts of the map could change mid-game? Like you just said there, like if we're on a bridge that's made of stone, could I make that stone bridge crumble? And if so, what does that take? And I learned that the interactive idea actually lends itself very closely to what you do in VFX. And that's my own personal little addition or unique sales point to the community. I haven't bumped into anyone else who's tried to use the interactive elements all that much. I seem to be the forerunner in that. So, yeah, for all you GMs who wants your battle maps to actually change before your eyes, and most importantly, for the GM to be in command of that, so they can change the battle map when they will. That's one of the parts of my products.
Right, you can open the doors, activate the traps, have the monsters move.
Absolutely. I mean, in Dwarven Undercity, that was that pack is. I really went a little bit too far with that pack. in a good way, because I just kept on thinking, oh, right. So it all began when I wanted to see if I could have like the floor of a dungeon crumble when you click a button. I thought that'd be a good trap. So then you've got to mimic the actual existing floor, and then you've got to crumble it into rocks. Then you've got to turn it into video, and then you've got to turn that video into something they can use in the VTT. And boom, you've got an interactive asset that all of a sudden a GM can make the floor crumble away. And as soon as I did that, I was like, yes, I did it. It works. What other traps can I do? And before I knew it, I'd made like 6 or 7 different traps, spears coming out of walls, fire coming out of statues, the Indiana Jones style boulder rolling down the corridor, ready to kill all your players. And I just overloaded the pack, but I salvaged as much as I could and just put it all into one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Dormant City is a great bit of value there.
So how did you go from, well, you started out kind of like doing maps for Blood Bowl and stuff like that, and
well, that's a bit of an experiment I've got going on at the moment. I'd like to branch out into other tabletop games, and Blood Bowl's an old favorite of mine. Obviously, I am not making maps for Blood Bowl. I am making maps for a fantasy football game. But
yes.
That is one thing I am looking into, yeah.
So tell us about your experiences with Traveller and how they eventually led to, or if there is a connection between Traveller and you branching into making sci-fi scenery.
Well, I've always loved Traveller for its... it just likes to flesh out the universe. It doesn't tell you what stories to tell. So it lends itself really well to applying to any game. And the local gaming group I was part of, I was really lucky because in my area, I had some very old school role players who were still hanging around with the new generation. And Traveller was one of those games where you kept seeing it being played, but if you were to ask someone, oh, what's that game about? They never gave you a very clear, simple answer because it could be about so much. And so when I got into it, unfortunately, I brought my usual youthful idiocy to it. But, you know, I was lucky because the GM was very patient and he took the time to calm me down, show me the joy of Traveller, the depth of it, just the way it just tries to flesh out the universe. And it was really easy to fall in love with once I started to approach it from that standpoint, rather than the young role player wanting to play the character who conquers the universe, gets the girl, and gets the booty. And I love that depth, and that's what led me into looking at other sci-fi RPGs.
Oh, did you play any other sci-fi RPGs?
Well, there was the Buck Rogers episode, which was talked about before, which... I won't repeat, but yeah, Buck Rogers, very strange RPG. But yeah, also Amber, that multi-dimensional.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could class that as sci-fi,
right?
And actually, I've been working with a team, Legitimate Games, who are making a game called Metanthropes, and I've been doing some work with that team, creating battle maps, tokens, and the like. And that is kind of like a modern reimagining of Amber. It's not actually Amber. It's nothing to do with the actual books that's based off, etc. It's just, it plays on that whole idea of interdimensional beings that somehow find themselves or are awakened in our reality and then go on to realize the full potential as these interdimensional metanthropes.
Interesting.
So look out for that.
All right. Yeah, cool. So, So do you feel like there's some like inspiration from Traveller in your sci-fi products?
There's inspiration from Traveller in most of sci-fi works these days. I mean, you can tell that a lot of the creatives these days have some kind of background in roleplay. I remember watching Vampire Diaries. I'm not proud of it, but I did it. Just realizing how much from World of Darkness.
Watched it by accident, yes. Mm-hmm.
My eyes fell onto the TV as it was on, and I just couldn't break away. So yeah, I think roleplay games have informed the modern popular culture more than people actually talk about.
Yeah, I'm amazed sometimes because I hear like newscasters reference Lord of the Rings or Star Trek, Or they'll
It's
say,
strange, isn't it?
yeah,
I think back in our day, to be an old man for a second, we were all sort of underground, weren't we? We were subcultures skulking in the shadows and the cracks and the corners of popular culture.
right.
And now all our interests have become kind of mainstream.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hear a newscaster say, warp speed, Mr. Scott, or like they'll say, you know, I don't know. So and so
That
is
would not
the
fly back in the
Sauron
day.
of, you know, restaurants or, you know, managers or something, you know, and you're like, wow, that's a funny thing for a newscaster, just reference fantasy pop culture, you know. It's more mainstream now. Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't have as much sci-fi as I'd like. I'm trying to work on more. One of my
Get with
most
the
recent
program,
ones,
Neil. This is the Traveller thing.
I know. Yeah, I know. Look, sci-fi is a big, big part of my imagination, and I love it dearly. But you know, we've all got to try and run a shop of some description. Yeah, I can't help it. But one of the latest ones is my first adventure. Coming, because that's something I'm branching out. I want to create more adventures, do more on YouTube. My first dipping my toe into adventure building is called Biomechanical Wreck, which is set on a nasty little asteroid in the middle of nowhere in which an alien ship is found. And it's system agnostic. I basically create dice systems in there that help the GM come up with a storyline based around trying to reactivate this alien ship. The thing about it, and this was inspired by Traveller, is I wanted it to be in the same kind of vein as Traveller. I wanted it to be so not abstracted, that's probably the wrong term, but it was non-specific. It's just about that ship, the system that I put in there. It helps you generate like a hook, a midpoint plot line, a finale, and throw some weird different types of aliens in there. But you could have it slotted into almost any sci-fi game that you're currently running, because it doesn't insist upon any kind of system for the particular stats of anything.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's a good way of doing it. Making it like agnostically modular.
Yeah. And that comes with battle maps. It comes with handouts. It comes with its own, pre-generated dice rolling system, just to show you the results of the encounters. And I also add descriptions in there, so a GM can just click the description; it will appear in the chat rather than just having to memorize it or voice it out. If they want to read it out, even better. They get to take advantage of the superior narrative skills. But they've also got the option to just click a button. So,
yeah, right.
The modern day, isn't it?
Where's that available?
That is only on Roll20 at the moment, just because I'm still learning all the different VTT's ways of putting an adventure together. But
sure.
Yeah, on Roll20, Biomechanical Wreck, an adventure for your sci-fi group.
Awesome. What about some of your other? You got like hostile life forms or something like that?
Oh yes, it's funny you should mention that. Yeah, I do have hostile life form, which is my kind of homage to certain banana-shaped headed creatures of the universe. So it's kind of like, it's sort of a grimdark, industrialized sci-fi future in which a hostile organism is aboard a sci-fi ship, and you've got modular battle map tiles. You've got more interactive stuff, like you can have the monster coming out of the wall or the floor. It's also got character tokens in there that are in theme, so you don't have to go looking elsewhere. And it's even got a bit where you can have a whole ship leaving a dock or entering it. So there's lots of nice things in Hostile Organism for you to have a look at.
Oh, very cool. How long did it take to create the Biomechanical Wreck?
Longer than I was used to, and because I'd got most of the actual visual assets down and ready. What took a while was just... And I don't know if you've ever tried to put an adventure together.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. It's just, the more you try and add into it, the more you're trying to juggle and balance and just try and get the system to slot into itself and function in a way that doesn't break itself. And that's what took most of my time. Every time I came up with an idea, you had to slot into everything else so it didn't contradict or mess any other systems up.
Right.
So yeah, that took me, I think it took me about 2 months to get all the art assets down, and then another 2 months just to get the system running as expected for Roll20. and queue it all up to basically save the GM time. So every time a GM presses a button and something elaborate happens, that's because I spent the time beforehand queuing it all up and putting the text in the right place.
Yeah, it's what do I want to say? Not having a lot of examples on Roll20 of like what a sci-fi adventure should look like. I just took a guess at it and, spent a lot of time like organizing it and putting it into sections and headings and handouts and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into one of those.
And a lot of it is the monotonous side of it. Just dropping the files in the right place, making sure it's named and located, and it's a lot of admin work on that side of things.
Yep. What about? Tell us a little bit about Galaxy Interface.
Galaxy Interface. Oh, that's one of my classics these days. That is for you to basically, if you're running a sci-fi game and you want to kind of keep track of a space sector, whether it's a sector or a whole universe, you've got large space maps and nebulas, several of them, to work with, and also a collection of planets, both animated and static, that you can people the galaxy with. And then obviously, because you're in a VTT, you can put notes down or little computer text, and they've got their animated features as well, or wormholes, that's got them in there, and a singularity. I give you a black hole to play with and throw in there, animated. So that's and the reason it's called Galaxy Interface is because the entire thing is meant to feel like you sat at some kind of sci-fi console. So while you're there with your group of players, talking about where you've been or where you're going, you've got something in theme to actually keep your players' minds on where you are and how it feels to like sit in front of a sci-fi console, plotting your routes through the galaxy.
Let's talk about your future plans. What do you have? You got any sci-fi stuff lined up for next year?
Sci-fi is actually coming to the forefront for me now. I'm getting more and more time to work on it. I don't want to give up too much because, well, I like to be a surprising guy, but grimdark and high fantasy sci-fi, that's kind of where a lot of the my new work's going to be. And a lot of it is going to be animated for the tabletop. So those people who like to use miniatures and those people who've got tabletop games that are sci-fi, Core Space, Star Wars Legion, X-Wing, these kind of things, I'm going to be bringing out a lot of animated maps that work really well with those. And that is more than likely going to be hosted on a Patreon shop under the name Animated Battle Mats. So I'm just trying to separate it a little bit from 2D Storyteller, which is mainly about my VTT work. And the Animated Battle Mats is going to be for the animated tabletop.
So let's talk about that. What's the difference between a VTT and an animated tabletop?
Right. Well, VTT is about playing online. Your players and your GM are sat behind a computer. And you can get really good games out of that, and you've got loads of tools that you wouldn't normally have when you sat around a table. Animated battle mats, that is basically going back around the table, except in it you've got a TV as a table instead of your normal just table. And because of that, you can basically switch between battle maps very easily, but you can also have battle maps which are fully animated. They are videos, not just images. And I've found that takes the atmosphere of a game to a whole new level. I've been dazzling my nephew and his friends with some of the work from my Patreon and getting requests from them for new games. They're very big on cyberpunk, so that is something else sci-fi that I'm going to be delving into. The dirty neon streets of the cyberpunk future, which we seem to be getting ever close to in the real world. So,
Why do you want to simulate the real world? Just wait till next year.
Yeah. It won't be long before we just call it punk.
Exactly. So what kinds of games do you, so you're saying Star Wars and stuff, do you actually put like LED miniatures on the TV screen?
Oh, I don't use LED miniatures anymore, but plastic.
Plastic ones, okay.
Yeah, because
I'm old school. They make plastic miniatures? No, I'm just kidding.
All right, you got me.
No.
But yeah, it's you have your miniatures on the table. What I use is a thin sheet of Perspex over the screen, and just to protect from scratches. I mean, I use miniatures, I use scenery, We were playing Walking Dead All Out War on it not so long back, and I had a whole city of buildings and cars and all the rest of it on my screen, and the miniatures on top of that. So yeah, it holds up just fine.
Wow, that's cool. Where did you? Is this something like? How did you find out about these gaming tables?
Well, they're all bespoke at the moment. There's no one big supplier. Everyone really has to make their own. I'm not good with woodwork, so I had to bribe someone to basically make a wooden frame from my TV. But it was relatively cheap. It's just a little bit of wood. Some people use TV mount brackets and then add some like material to the base of that just to give it some extra support. But I saw one person. They basically got a cheap IKEA table that a flat pack that you assemble, and just when it came to the table, they just cut out the hole for the actual table. They had it supported from underneath, and then a perspex sheet over the top, and away they go.
Wow, that's cool. Good idea.
There's a surprising amount of options out there. I mean, I know you can find some on Etsy. At some point, I'd like to create a good solution for that's widely available, but that's a bit off yet. That's me looking more at the 3D printing side.
That would be cool to sell your own like do-it-yourself kit, or
Definitely.
plans.
It's just obviously a challenge because you're supporting a television and you need the design, and then that's a lot of resin.
That's a lot of work. Stop giving me more work.
More work, please.
Let's talk about how about your socials? Do you have any socials people should know about?
Of course, yes. The usual suspects: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all under 2D Storyteller. Please come along, say hello, join in. And if you've got any ideas of things you'd like to see, I'm always happy to hear them. Can't guarantee I'm going to take on every crazy project, but I love a good crazy project from the public every now and again.
What about your Patreon? What's going on with that?
Oh, well, the Patreon, it didn't work in the way I needed it to, and things just kind of got to a point where I needed to change things. So I suspended the Patreon for a while until basically that will become animated battle mats in the future.
All right.
So keep an eye out for that. So anyone who wants to join up early on animated battle mats, you can find me on Facebook there. I will be announcing it when it launches on my 2D Storyteller, so you can always sign up there and you'll know when it happens.
Are you present and interactable with? Are you
always
on your socials? Yeah.
Of course, yeah. By all means, come along and say hello.
Where's the best place? Like, where do you hang out?
I hang out mostly on Facebook for my sins. But I monitor them all, so if you comment or you try to reach me or if you message me, no doubt I'll be back as soon as possible. Although the most highest volume of messages I get on Facebook at the moment are people sending random warnings pretending to be Facebook. But there you go. That's the scammers for you.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I get messages like that in my inbox.
Me.
Yeah, do they? They bothered me once and then they stopped. Yeah.
Oh no! Every week I've got a new one.
Oh, wonderful.
Or new 2 or 3 in some weeks.
Alrighty. Let's see. Where's the best place to find your products?
Well, if you go onto my Facebook page, I have a link tree, which basically gives you the option to find my work on Fantasy Grounds, on Arkenforge, on Roll20, on Foundry VTT. That's where it'll give you all the links for all those different storefronts. Oh,
cool. Very good. All right.
And also, if you want to see my trailers, because I love to make trailers for my work, head on over to YouTube, 2D Storyteller, get that into Google, and have a look at some of my trailers where I don't just yak about what I'm talking about now. I actually show you visually and take you through it. Interactive and animated battle map.
Yeah, I saw some that were like werewolves and vampires.
Oh, yes, that's something recently I've been working on. A modern gothic, let's just say, with vampires and werewolves in an urban setting. So that's battle maps, that's character tokens, all to help you bring your modern gothic RPG alive.
Where do you get these ideas? Does it mostly come from your community, or do you just, like, through your day, you go, hey, that's an idea?
Well, I live so much of my life in my imagination, and I make no apologies for it because I love it. Ever since I was a kid, that's That's just me. I love it's my favorite possession, my imagination. And so I'm like anyone else. I'll watch films. We were just talking about Twilight Zone earlier. That's a great source for just throwing your imagination out there, because some of the writers on Twilight Zone are, just on the cusp of genius and madness, and some of the ideas they come up with are fantastic. I mean, you were telling me about the alien ship that blows up Earth. That was.
Oh yeah, that's on the new Outer Limits. Yeah, that's.
The new Outer Limits.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that anthological work is really good for that.
No, it is. It's good because it gives you an overview of different kinds of writers and different styles, and maybe stories that you wouldn't have thought of or read out of, because they're out of the ordinary for your interests or whatever.
Yeah, and short stories give writers a chance just to try something off the wall, just something totally weird and wonderful.
Right. Yeah. If you do small projects, you can get a lot of them out, and you get better and better
exactly
at it. Yeah.
And that's kind of the same approach I take when I'm creating any kind of project. I just try and think, ooh, that's a nice idea, run with it, see where it takes me, see how crazy I can make it, see how far I can take it before it just becomes something mad and I have to rein it in a little bit.
Did you have any cool TV shows or movies or anything sci-fi related since we've heard from you last? Or
I've just literally today started watching the Fallout series, which I suppose you can class as sci-fi to some degree. And I am really impressed with how that's translated to screen. I didn't think it would do, because so few things do. But that has turned out to be a really good series.
I can't wait to watch it. I sat down to watch it the other night because they released it a day early, and I sat down to watch it. But I guess I jumped the gun and it wasn't quite posted yet, so I ended up watching something. I watched Invincible season 2, but but I do want to see Fallout. It's from my point of view, very few movies made from video games turned out to be very good. But
to be honest, in general, adaptions are a big risky move.
Yeah.
I mean, so many adaptions were just a waste of everybody's time.
Right. So, but it's sci-fi, so I'm going to give it a chance, and I'm optimistic and looking forward to it because it's been getting good reviews. Actually, I just didn't really use it as a standalone thing because I'm not familiar too much with the Fallout stuff.
Look, it's the setting. That's what I'm so impressed by. They really managed to capture the atmosphere, because Fallout can be a pretty cruel setting, and I thought, they're going to tone it down so much so it's not interesting, but they really don't.
Oh, good.
They embrace what Fallout is.
Great,
harsh, satirical.
I love that kind of thing. I love Gamma World, and I love Planet of the Apes, any kind of or Mad Max, any irradiated wasteland, post-apocalyptic weirdness, mutants, and strange things going on.
As a show, it's got teeth, and that's the thing that I always miss so much about sci-fi: teeth. It's got to have a bit of a bite to it. It's got to have an edge to it, and it every scene almost has a bit of an edge to it in that. Awesome. Especially the first episode. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I won't say anything specific.
All right. Yeah, well, I'll check it out. I look forward to it. So, Neil, do you have any bundles?
I've got Deep Space Bundle, which includes Hostile Organism, Galaxy Interface, and Starship Battles. The good thing about that is it kind of each pack is a different kind of perspective. The Galaxy Interface is at the big, abstract, galaxy-wide perspective. The Starship Battles is at obviously the Starship kind of dogfighting and capital class ships perspective, and that's on hex maps. And it includes all kind of classes of ships, so you can recreate Starship Battles. And then finally, you got Hostile Organism, which is player perspective. That's where you're in the ship, wandering around, trying to desperately survive against an alien foe. So Deep Space Bundle is great for anyone who wants a nice big starter pack for running any kind of sci-fi game, because it's got just about everything you could need to get going.
Yeah, the Hostile Organism is great. It's got modular parts for building your mining colony or whatever, and animated doors and panels that open. It's monsters coming out of the vents. It's great.
It's jam-packed with goodies for your sci-fi role-playing GM.
Yes, totally. All right, cool. What else? Got anything else? Hit me.
Hey, yeah. Dune! We haven't spoken about
Oh,
Dune.
yes, talk about Dune. Have you seen Dune?
Dune. I've seen Dune. Have you seen Dune?
I have not. I haven't. I saw the first one, but I haven't seen the second.
It's definitely carries on that same high level of quality.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you that. I missed the Sardaukar chanting, but that was probably the only thing that I missed out. I'm really impressed by this adaptation of Dune. Like we said, most adaptations fall short, but this one really does capture the book. It captures it really well. I'm a huge fan of the original Lynch one as well. Don't get me wrong, this takes nothing away from that. I love seeing the Harkonnens in their black leather wandering around looking all pustuled. But this take on it, it's very true to the book, while at the same time being a watchable film and an interesting film, a good film. I'm doing it a disservice by just saying watchable. It's a good film.
It's got lots of great reviews. People are talking about it, how great it is. My Facebook feed is wall-to-wall Dune hype, so I don't know, like...
Oh, the Harkonnen women with the black teeth are just creepy creatures. Oh, they're very creepy. They love to eat internal organs as well.
I'm going to say it's like somebody gave them some of that joke gum from the 50s that turns your teeth black. All right. Well, my guest today has been Mr. Neil Thorpe of 2D Storyteller. Neil, thank you so much for returning to Mayday. This is the 6th annual, and I think you've been here for pretty much the whole thing.
I have. I'm an old dog at this, Frank.
Very good, sir.
I'd like to thank you for having me, and many good wishes to all your people across the pond.
Why, thank you, sir. That's quite gracious of you.
Oh, that's very kind of you. From 2D Storyteller, I'd like to say, have a good evening, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. And from Lord David Attenborough.
These aliens have been... Sorry.
Well, thanks, Neil. Don't forget to pick up his sci-fi packs wherever his products are sold. They're great quality things, and his animated bundles in general. So, folks, until next time, happy traveling. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.